difficult conversations, how we like to avoid difficult conversations. Some of the most difficult conversations that we're avoiding, when we have those conversations, that's the key to our wellness, that's the key to our joy, our happiness, our contentment, our success, the difficult conversations. Those things we just don't want to have to deal with. And so one of those difficult conversations regards race. I believe that race is like the primary issue that our nation faces, really that the world faces, but for this conversation, our nation. We have definite ills, definite atrocities that have been perpetrated by individuals in this nation since its inception. And like a seed, our actions grow. That's why societies and cultures historically have understood that we reap what we sow. What goes around comes around. Chickens come home to roost. There's a thing called karma, because what we plant, we grow, even if it's unintentional. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, because I believe that if we have these conversations, our situations can be resolved easier, or our situations can be resolved. But if we deny the conversations, they can't. And so that's what we're going to talk about is race today, and the effect that it's had in our nation, among the people. I think there's a misunderstanding about two things. Privilege. This nation, I know we like to harp on white privilege from the side of people feeling they've been oppressed generationally in this nation, and pointing our fingers at those who are experiencing privilege. But then on the other hand, denying the privilege, like my life is terrible, it's messed up. How can you say I have privilege? I don't have any money, I'm drug addicted, I've been on my third wife, my children are a mess, so it's hard to actually accuse folks of having this white privilege when their very lives reflect just the opposite, okay? And this is very important, because what I want to share is that privilege has been misunderstood. Privilege has had a definition attached to it as if, you're like the wealthy, the rich and the famous, and you have that type privilege. That's not privilege, always. I mean, there are certain doors that are open, certain things that can be accomplished, a certain lifestyle that can be lived, and to the poor and the regular folks, that seems like privilege. But how many wealthy folks have committed suicide? How many wealthy folks have indulged themselves so much in decadent behavior that they virtually destroyed their lives? Now, if they were really enjoying what we consider as privilege, why would they be so destructive? And that's what we're going to talk about today. Part of what we're going to talk about today is this idea of privilege is not good, okay? Privilege has a way of making you, convincing you that it's not necessary to try so hard. And remember that story of the tortoise and the hare? That tortoise, that hare, the rabbit, it had privilege. It could run fast. It had long legs. No problem. And so it was in a race with a very slow turtle. And so his privilege was his gift. He was way better off than that turtle, and everybody knew. The money's on the rabbit, okay? He's going to win this race. So what happens, he gets comfortable. He chills out, he doesn't try so hard. And that little tortoise just keeps on moving, steadily, slowly, consistently. And while that rabbit was just chilling, enjoying his privilege, believing this was going to not even be an issue, he falls asleep. And the turtle just walks on by him, and eventually the rabbit wakes up and he sees the turtle way ahead. He's getting ready to cross that finish line. He jumps up and starts running with all his might, but the turtle crosses that finish line before the hare, before the rabbit. So we see what privilege did. The privilege this rabbit exemplifies is what is what created its downfall. It didn't have to try so hard. And so when we look around this nation and we recognize the racial divide, and we try to follow it back to its beginning. You know, there's a Buddhist saying that if you want to find the mother, follow the child, and the child will lead you back to the mother. If you want to understand how something began, follow its results backward, and you'll see. And so I simply suggest that we have a conversation, because we have in this nation a tremendous divide. There's an old adage that a house divided against itself cannot stand, and a nation divided against itself cannot stand. And it's like we come to a place that when you deny something so much, that is true, it convolutes your thinking, and your thinking is really all that you are. René Descartes said these words. He said, "I think, therefore I am." He was questioning existence, questioning religion, questioning beliefs, questioning politics, questioning life, questioning everything. And then he began to question his existence. And he came to the conclusion that the fact that I'm even questioning my existence is evidence that I exist. I think, therefore I am. So what we go through in life, the joys, the pains, the hurts, the happiness, the grief, the anger, these aren't attributes of the body. These are attributes of the mind, attributes of what is invisible, of who we are. I think, therefore I am. Okay? So it's the I am that's being affected. See, we focus, when we talk about privilege, we look at an individual's life, we look at the exterior, we look at the body, we look at the things, the toys. The man who dies with the most toys wins. We look at all that, and that's how we determine, or how we try to judge privilege. But the privilege, that's the outward appearance, and that is nice, that is good, that's success, you know, for all the people to see. But the real success, or the real failure, is internal. It's me. It's who I am. I think, therefore I am. And this is where the outward, the outward appearance is deceiving, because our privilege is not what we can acquire. Because what I have acquired is not me. I think, therefore I am. What have I acquired? Have I acquired peace of mind? Have I acquired satisfaction? Have I acquired happiness? Have I acquired contentment? Or have I acquired unrest, negativity, harshness, suspicion, guilt, grief, anger? Life is short. Life as we know it is short. And what I'm suggesting today is it's easy to build outward entrapments. It's easy to present an image of success. That's not difficult at all. But the true success is the I am. How are you? Okay? And what I'm suggesting is we are not well in this nation, because we have bought into appearance rather than contentment. And when you buy into appearance and you have the ability to acquire, you're going to continue acquiring to maintain that contentment as we try to create a contentment from the outside in, where true contentment emanates from within and manifests out. That's why you could find a wealthy person that has so much and he's miserable and has to keep trying to acquire more. You'd think, man, you got $1 million, we got $50 million, you got $1 billion. Isn't that enough? No. Because there's no contentment there. And it's like the drug addict believing that if they can just get that one more high, they can acquire that buzz they thought they felt when they had that first high. And they keep trying to get that contentment, to get that contentment buzz, and they never get there. And the next time you see them, they're standing on the side of the road, zombie-like. True contentment cannot be attained through exterior acquisitions. True contentment emanates from within, the I am. And as long as, and the I am is not content when it is not dealt with honestly. Because subconsciously, we know truth. Come on now. Jesus said in Scripture, I believe, that it's the truth that makes us free. What could he possibly mean by that? The truth will make you free. Well, who are you? You are the I am. And so that religious proverb speaks to the I am. The truth will make you free. And as long as we deny truth, as long as we deny conversations and don't want to talk about it and pretend that it doesn't happen, we're in bondage. We're not free. And that goes true for the individual. That holds true for each of us. Whether it's in a marriage, whether it's in a relationship, even within yourself, you could eat all the sweets you want. You could not exercise. You can just do everything against your body that you desire and think you're okay, or deny the truth, but eventually it's going to catch up with you because you're in bondage. Denial creates bondage. And so I was speaking to a gentleman not long ago. He was a white guy, Army guy, friend of mine. I was in the Air Force, he was in the Army. And we have all kinds of conversations about social issues, about political issues, and it's like most of the time we're on opposite sides of the spectrum, but we seem to be able to still have these conversations even though we're not in agreement. But we were talking the other day, and I was explaining to him how a lot of kids, a lot of young kids, they just kind of hate white people, a lot of black kids. And he was astonished. And I began to explain, someone my age, coming up in the 70s as a young person, a teenager, and a military man in the 70s, and then subsequently in corporate America in the 80s, and then back with the civilian government in the 90s, up until today for the past 32 years. That black people like me have learned to navigate the system because in our time it was necessary to navigate the system in order to do well, in order to be okay. So you can't be holding grudges against white people and expect to succeed in a society where you're always faced with having to deal with them in various levels, of leadership. And so you found a way to just deal with it. To recognize and to see the truth, but to recognize that there is an end goal and it was necessary to navigate through that system. And so we came to a point where, we tolerated white people as far as the attitudes, because we all knew, we knew what racism was. The time I came up, there wasn't anything about not using the N word, but if you didn't mind getting your eyes swollen shut, So we had a society where people didn't do things because they knew there would be repercussions, okay? Now there's no repercussions, say whatever you want. And see, I came up in the days in the 70s, from high school, junior high school, and all, and then in the military in 1976, that I got to see that white people were afraid of black people. For real. They thought, first of all, every black man had a knife. Come on, man. Me? I did, but they thought I did. As well, they were just afraid, and so a lot of times that kept them from saying things that they might have wanted to say, they wouldn't say, simply because they thought they might get beat down. And so I go back far enough to recognize that the reason that this gun lobby is so strong, the reason why the Second Amendment folks are so adamant about those guns, is because it finally gave them strength. It finally gave them courage. It finally gave them guts. Okay? And so that's why it's going to take, you have to pry my cold dead hands off of my gun, because for the first time around black people, white people had confidence. White people were not afraid as long as I got this gun. I mean, and I'm telling you, I mean, I believe in guns. I have guns, a AR, shotgun, 9mm. I have weapons. And you do feel more confident when you have that weapon on you and you're going places. Especially as you get older, like me. So as far as white people concerning black people, there's a confidence, in having that gun. And the reality is you don't have to deal with issues that might need discussing. You don't have to deal with generational wrongs that have might been perpetrated against the people and then recognize today they're simply living in response to a generational type PTSD. You don't even have to think about it because you're not afraid anymore. You don't have to have those conversations. But what I'm suggesting is these conversations are necessary not for the oppressed, but for the oppressor, because we do reap what we sow. And it's not always in a physical way. It's in a mental way. It's an emotional way. Say for example, you have a man, and he hits his wife, and she is hurt, and immediately he feels sorry. He feels bad. He can't even believe he did that, but he doesn't apologize to her. And he just feels bad every time he sees her, because he knows what he did was wrong. And eventually, each time he sees her, that bad feeling, it's going to evolve into resentment. Because he resents the feeling that he has every time he sees her. He knows he did it. But he knows that her presence brings out a feeling in him that doesn't make him feel good. He was sorry at first. He was sad at first. But now he's resenting her because of the feeling that comes in him because of what he did to her. Okay? This is the I am responding. This isn't his hands, his legs. This isn't his home, his car. This isn't any of that stuff. This is the I am. This is me. This is him. Eventually that resentment evolves into anger. So first he was sad, but he never rectified it, never dealt with it. And that sadness turned to resentment because he resented the feeling that he had every time he was around her. But that resentment turned to anger now. Every time he's around her, he gets angry. And because the feeling he has, the feeling he has based on what he did that he never resolved. And eventually that anger reemerges as violence. And all he had to do was simply apologize. Deal with it. Admit that he was wrong. Admit what he did. And the situation would have been resolved. But we maintain. That's why the religious proverb says that the truth will make us free. Because as long as we're not having a dialogue, as long as we're not communicating about a past ill, about my past ill, I am in bondage. This isn't for the sake of the oppressor, of the oppressed, although the oppressed does get the benefit, but the reality is I am the one in bondage. So when we look at our nation, we look at a people in bondage. The people in bondage aren't the oppressed, aren't the ones in the chains, because that's simply your body. And that's important. But the people in true bondage are the perpetrators. Because their bondage is the I am. They are in bondage. And so we have to have these conversations. And we see our nation today. We see the ills we are facing. We see the confusion. We see the divide between people for politics, religion, race, all this stuff, man. And what I'm suggesting is it all boils down to simply not addressing the real issues early on. It's simply a path to destruction. And what's interesting is anyone who thinks you won just because you won, that's not winning if you are not free. We must have these dialogues. We must have these conversations. Because I'm looking at these kids, like the educated kids today, nowadays. My daughter, she's 21 years old, a senior in college, and going off to graduate school after her senior year. And you know, I'd never been to an HBCU other than the parties, you know, when I was in the military, and I'd find an HBCU on Friday night. But going with her to her college and seeing a campus of 10,000 young black future engineers and lawyers and doctors. It was amazing. And then you multiply all of those institutions, the HBCUs, by that 10,000. And then you factor in also the black kids that are going to schools that are not HBCUs. There's a lot of black kids that have seen a lot of stuff that have a lot of resentment to white people. Why? Well, why can't they navigate the system like we navigated the system? Because kids like my daughter, they were 3 years old when Obama became president. And so all that they've known from age 3 to age 11 was a black president. And then as they become cognizant of life and what's going on, maybe around age 7 or so, they begin seeing this good black man with nice children and a nice wife, nice people, being attacked verbally by white people. So we can always, we try to see through our own eyes, and we're saying that's not logical, that's not all white people and all this stuff. But no, we have to begin seeing through the eyes of a child. How are they processing this? They see a president that looks just like them, and this is the only president the nation has ever had as far as they're concerned, in their cognitive minds. And he's being attacked viciously, as well as his wife and his 2 daughters. How are they processing this? It's sadness. And this isn't fair. I mean, this is a child. There's no anger. There's no anger at this point. It's just sadness. It's not fair. They can't believe it. Why are these people treating these people like this? These people who look like me. It seems like that's why they're treating them like this. Because they look like me. And now, from a black man that came up in the 70s, the reality is, yeah, that is why they're treating them like that. See, this isn't political, it's racial, man. And so now these kids, then they're past 11, then there's a new president, white guy, and now they're still mad and they're still ragging on the black guy that ain't even president anymore. And a lot of racial negativity, a lot of words that are terrible, a lot of divide. And as the kids are growing older, now they're seeing the targeting of the brown people, the Mexican people, targeting of Muslims who are, you know, primarily, as far as that we can see, are darker skinned. And so these young people are growing up 100% with the feeling that these white people are not good. Now, in white people's defense, kind of, in this nation, so you have this black man becoming president, and this isn't political, it's not a matter of a political party. It's just a simple reality of what we go through in life. So you have white people that felt this privilege. And it's the same privilege of that hare, that rabbit, the rabbit and the turtle. It's that privilege. It's not that I'm born inherently superior, like there's something about me that's superior, but I am born into a society which inherently makes me or perceives me as being better than this person over here, and I enjoy that feeling. And I even see the individuals and not really being treated as well as I am. I see it. I know it. And I may not even agree with it totally, but you know, hey, that's unfortunate for them, but this is what I was born as. All the while looking at the exterior, judging everything by the exterior rather than the I am. The I am isn't going for it. That's why you find, even with these racist rants and racist people, you know, the segregation today, segregation forever, and all that stuff. These are the most miserable looking and acting people. They're angry. Now, if you're functioning in something, you would think that if you had privilege and you were functioning in something that was good and that was beneficial to you, you'd always be happy. But these are some of the most miserable people. And going even further and further. Now, why would you need segregation if you felt that you were on top and everything was great. Because it's never satisfying. It's trying to find that buzz and trying and figuring the more I get, the more I go, the further I go, that's where my contentment will be. But it's never there. Because the I am is discontent. While the body might be experiencing privilege, okay? And so I was speaking to this white guy, and I was trying to express to him how these young, educated black kids by the tens of thousands are growing up and detesting white people. And he took issue with the conversation and didn't want to talk anymore. We can't do that. We have to discuss these things, because the only way we're going to find resolution is through discussion. But it's hard, I understand. And it's challenging. So as I was, contemplating and recognizing, kind of empathizing with the mindset or the dilemma of white people when Obama became president, there has to have been trauma involved. Because you have a people that came up with this idea of privilege. Not really embracing that I am better in my physical world as far as my acquisitions, my net worth, what kind of home and neighborhood I live in, but that from a societal perspective, I am privileged, I'm better, just because of what I was born as. Nothing to do with me, but because how I came into this world. And so anybody that knows history recognizes there was a definite benefit, in our society to being white compared to being other people. I mean, slavery. The white people weren't slaves. I mean, they might have been poor, they might have been indentured servants, they might have been working right next to the slaves in the field, but the fact was they were not slaves, okay? And so you're coming up, so you have children are being born of slaves, children are being born of white people, and you're talking about hundreds of years of this. There's a perception of superiority among white people, simply because this is the society that you're born into, and you are white and they are not. But then things begin to change. The society begins to evolve. Black people become successful. Black people, of course, become successful in music. Black people, of course, become successful in sports. I mean, you have to walk in any place that you can. Okay. we live in a very nice neighborhood, very nice house. Been here about 17 years. But when we first moved here, I guess there was something, in the pavement around the basement, that whenever we'd have like torrential rain would like seep through, and some of the ceiling panels would begin to get discolored because the water would come through and stain it. Okay, and so the rest of the house was fine, but the water found its way into our house. The best way that it could, okay? And sort of correlating that to even black people and their success in this nation is that it started with like the music. And then, we began to become business owners, and very successful, some. Politics, mayors and governors. In every realm of politics, black people began to creep into that. But still, and they were embraced. They were embraced as business owners, Johnson & Johnson's and many others, and of course the sports figures and music. Everybody loved Michael Jackson, right? But then there came the presidency of the United States of America. Let me tell you how deep this was. It was deeper than just simply a black man getting elected. It was like all these years of superiority, all these years of perceived privilege, all these years of being born into a society where I was better, generation after generation, and believing that I am, even though there was nothing that I did to have attained, this place. I'm still better. Yeah, you got sports people. Yeah, you got music people. Yeah, you got some people in business and politics and all. But the last vestige of that illusion, of that self-perceived superiority, was that untouched seat of the presidency of the United States. Now, admittedly, only been like 39 or 40 presidents, so most white people couldn't be president, just like black people. But no black man had ever been president, elected president, until at that moment. And I remember that day. I don't know if you remember that day. You should remember that day. Every people were crying on both sides. But it was a traumatic event for both white people and black people, for those people that thought they were privileged, perceived they were privileged. And now had to face the fact that there was nothing in life that they could hold on to, that they could claim that superiority, because every aspect of life, every function, every job, every office, everything had been touched by that black man, and now you had a black president. And, man, it was time for some reflection, some self-reflection. That was trauma. I'm better than nobody. Imagine that. For hundreds of years in this nation, even though much of it was imagined superiority, actual superiority over people, at least you were in a place where you could surround yourself with like-minded folks and talk about the other folks and embrace this concept of superiority in yourself. But at this particular point, there's nothing. The President of the United States, the most powerful man in the entire world, emanating from your country, is a black man. That was trauma, man. That was trauma, to believe all of your life and every generation that you had superiority over certain people. So the thing is, it didn't matter how dismal your life was. It didn't matter how poor you were, what your criminal history was, how you couldn't get a job. You might be at McDonald's. It doesn't even matter how dismal your life was. At least I'm better than that black man. And if you think about it, look at our nation. Look at the white people. Most white people are poor. Most white people aren't living good lives, aren't living well lives, aren't living prosperous lives. Well, most black people aren't either, but they're not the ones who were feeling superior. See, when your life is dismal and everything is jacked, you know, my wife left me, got no money, my dog died, my pickup truck don't run. You know, whatever the situation is in your life, at least you're better than that black man. And in that gave you a sense of survival, mental survival, self-perception. Where does self-perception come from? Yeah, I am. Doesn't matter what my physical trappings were like. I'm okay because I see somebody, a group of people, a number of people who are less than me. And that's the situation. Until Obama became president, that was gone. They had nothing. That was trauma for white people, for many white people. That's when the Tea Party came. We're going to make sure he's a one-term president. That's where all that came from. It wasn't political. Although it seemed like it wasn't political. It was racial. And because the white people were dealing with a tremendous trauma. Things are not the way I perceived them to be. I am not what I perceived myself to be. Because they were judging their wellness on their exterior, when their true being was interior, and they couldn't see that, they couldn't deal with that. All they recognized was, I'm not what I thought I was. Black people the same. There was a trauma there. No, black people didn't think a black man could be president, although we probably, most of us probably voted for him, but we didn't buy that. Come on, man. We felt that Bill Clinton was the first black president. How pathetic is that? But that's the kind of situation black folks were in. We couldn't perceive or conceive that there could be a black president. Bill Clinton was the first black president. Then we had a movie out with Chris Rock where he somehow became president of the United States, you know, and that was a great movie. It was a fun movie, but totally unbelievable. That's why it was so funny. Little did we know, that was a trauma for black people as well. These black people crying. I think I'd shed a tear or two myself. Jesse Jackson, who didn't even like Barack Obama, he was crying because it was something deeper. It was deeper than politics. It was like the I am of black people had finally been vindicated. had finally been seen, had finally been recognized. It doesn't matter if they don't like it, they see it. This is what it is. And for the first time, black people began to, okay, you see me. And so I'm just saying, I think the nation had an opportunity there to vindicate itself, to appreciate and to embrace and to recognize and say, hey, maybe we were wrong. I think Obama got the Nobel Peace Prize when he became elected, and people were incensed. But what they didn't understand was the world saw what happened. The world knows history often better than we do. They saw the transformation. They saw a nation that came up such as ours, so heinous, so oppressive, so genocidal in nature, enslaving Africans. And in such a short time, a few hundred years, had now elected a black president. Obama didn't get that Nobel Peace Prize. That Nobel Peace Prize was given to America. But America proved itself unworthy. Here, we don't want this. Take it back. We want things back the way they were. No, it could never go back. But there was a vitriol. There was a negativity toward this black man. And because of the trauma, it's understood, because rather the trauma could have been eliminated, alleviated, if just the denials had just been eliminated. Okay, we get it, we messed up, it was, and just admit what happened. There'd be no negativity, there'd be no harshness. But instead of that, there was a lot of harshness, a lot of negativity, a lot of vitriol. You know, I know they're talking recently about a couple of assassination attempts on our current president, like 3 assassination attempts. But there were 11 assassination attempts on Obama's life. There were 5 on Biden, and there were even 2 on Kamala Harris. Come on now. But these things are not recognized, because anything that would give folks a reason to continue denying reality is like fodder, is like food. Keeps them alive. But alive on the exterior, but dead on the interior. And so what we create then is this negativity we transfer to our children, okay? Not only to our children, but the children of those who the angst is directed against. And so we have a lot of black children today, especially the educated ones, that despise white people. And what I'm saying is that's not healthy for them either. But the generation that birthed them, we're the ones who created this environment. We can't just step back and talk about how terrible it is and how wrong it is. It was even amazing to me that a white guy was telling me how all these black kids are being racist. Come on, man. You, a white man, are telling me how black folks are being racist? Come on, what'd you do? You know, you didn't take your history courses? Come on, I mean, that should have never come out of anybody's mouth. Because if you created a situation where people resent you, that's not on them. How many Mexicans, you know, in this nation like white people? How many Native Americans in this nation like white people? How many black folks in this nation like white people? How many, half the white people in this nation don't like the other half of the white people? The white people in this world, most of them don't like white Americans. So what's the common factor in all those scenarios? And you know, I'm a guy, now I'm a minister as well, and I never present any kind of condemnation or criticism that can't be fixed. Because to me, there would be no purpose behind it. But I'm saying all that takes is an acknowledgement. It is a recognition that this is what you did. I'm like, and this is harmful. This is harmful to white people who are maintaining, because there'll never be peace. Jesus did in fact say, it's the truth that will make you free. And all I'm suggesting is, I'm saying is, when you finally reckon with that, and admit and face and embrace the truth, you'll be free. You won't have any kind of negativity. Come on, it's like that husband that hit his wife and then never dealt with it and ended up resenting the feeling he had when he was around her, and then began to get angry with her because of the resentment he had toward her, and then became violent with her because of his anger and his resentment. All he has to do is fess up, recognize he did wrong, and he's not going to do it again. So I'm just saying, the truth will make us free. And what I'm suggesting is that like that rabbit, the only way to victory is to recognize that your privilege has been your ball and chain. And if you want freedom, you must embrace the truth.